The call came at 2:17 a.m., slicing through my sleep like a blade. And before I even answered it, my chest tightened because some part of me already knew my life was about to tilt. I pressed the phone to my ear, heard her breathing on the other end, and realized the woman I had been helping for years was about to say something that would change everything. I believed about love, loyalty, and the dead. That was the moment I understood that grief doesn't always end at the grave. Before I take you back to how this all began, take a second to like this video, subscribe if these real life stories move you, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight, because this story still shakes me when I tell it. My husband Daniel died 7 years ago on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. The kind of day that feels cursed in hindsight when the sky presses down on the world as if it's grieving too. We were both 32, newly married, still arguing about where to hang pictures we hadn't bought yet, still planning trips we never took. A drunk driver ran a red light, and just like that, my future collapsed into a hospital hallway that smelled like antiseptic and moss. At the funeral, I stood beside his mother, Eleanor, holding her hand as she sobbed into my shoulder, telling me over and over that I was the daughter she never had, that we would always be family. I believed her. I needed to believe her. In the months that followed, when the casseroles stopped coming and friends drifted back to their lives, Eleanor and I talked often. She lived alone, fixed income, small house filled with photos of Daniel at every age. One afternoon, she mentioned casually how hard it was to keep up with bills since her arthritis forced her to retire early. That night, I stared at my bank app for a long time. $200 wasn't nothing to me, but it felt like something I could do for Daniel, for the woman who raised the man I loved. I sent it the next morning with a note that said, "For Mom, from us." She cried when she called to thank me. That became our routine. Every month on the 1st, I sent $200. Sometimes she'd call and talk about her garden, sometimes about missing Daniel, sometimes about how proud he would be of me. I remarried eventually, carefully carrying my past like fragile glass. My new husband, Mark, knew about the payments. He questioned it once, gently asking me if I was sure it was necessary, and I told him it was about honor, about keeping a promise to the dead. He didn't push. Years passed. The payments continued. I never missed a month. Even when money was tight, even when we were saving for our own child. Then came the call. Eleanor's voice was sharp, different, not the fragile tremble I was used to. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't say my name. She said, "You need to stop sending the money." I sat up in bed, confused, heart pounding. I asked if she was okay, if something had happened. There was a pause, and then she said words I still hear in my nightmares. "I don't need your charity anymore. Daniel took care of me just fine." I laughed, actually laughed, because grief does strange things, and told her Daniel had been gone for years. She inhaled slowly and said, "You really don't know, do you?" My hands started shaking. She told me Daniel had set up an account years before his death. Money he'd inherited from an uncle, money she'd been living on quietly. My $200, she said, was unnecessary and frankly insulting. I felt stupid, embarrassed, but also relieved that she was financially secure. I apologized, told her I only wanted to help. That's when her tone shifted again, colder. "You should apologize for more than that," she said. I asked what she meant, and she told me Daniel had planned to leave me, that he'd told her I was controlling, that our marriage wasn't what I pretended it was. I felt like I'd been slapped. I told her she was wrong, that Daniel and I loved each other, that we were happy. She laughed, a dry sound full of something ugly. "He loved you," she said, "but he didn't trust you." The call ended with her telling me not to contact her again. I didn't sleep that night, or the next, or the one after. I dug through old emails, photos, memories, searching for cracks I might have missed. Mark watched me unravel, held me when I cried, reminded me that Eleanor was grieving in her own twisted way. Then, a week later, a letter arrived in the mail addressed to me in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a photocopy of a bank statement and a note that said, "You deserve to know the truth. The account Eleanor mentioned existed, but it had been drained 5 years ago." The beneficiary wasn't her. It was a name I didn't recognize at first until it clicked like a sick puzzle piece. It was Daniel's cousin, the one Eleanor had always said was a disappointment. I drove to Eleanor's house that afternoon, heart hammering, letter clutched in my hand. She tried to shut the door on me, but something in my face made her stop. I asked her about the money. She went pale, then furious, accusing me of spying, of betrayal. Then the truth spilled out in angry fragments. Daniel had planned to change the beneficiary, she said, but died before he could. She had pressured him, guilted him, told him she'd be destitute without it. When the cousin took the money and cut contact, Eleanor panicked. My $200 became her lifeline. She hadn't told me because she was ashamed, because she liked being taken care of, because it felt like Daniel was still providing through me. I stood there realizing the woman I'd been honoring had been lying to me for years. I told her I wasn't angry about the money. I was angry about the lies, about rewriting my marriage, about using my love for her son as a weapon. She screamed then, screamed that I owed her, that without Daniel she had nothing, that I should be grateful she ever accepted me. I walked away shaking, grief reopening like an old wound ripped wide. That night, I cried harder than I had at Daniel's funeral, not because I missed him more, but because I finally let go of the version of him I'd been protecting in my mind. I stopped the payments. I blocked her number. Weeks later, another call came from an unknown number. It was Eleanor, her voice smaller now, apologizing, asking for forgiveness, asking for help. I listened, tears running down my face, and told her I hoped she found peace. But I couldn't be her bridge to the past anymore. When I hung up, I felt lighter and heavier all at once. I learned that honoring the dead doesn't mean sacrificing the living, and that sometimes the most painful goodbye isn't to a person you lost, but to the lie you carried to survive them.